Hey there again. What am I doing? I've made 3 videos now on Hank's channel without much comment on the fact that, like, what? Why? And I gotta admit, I did not expect the response I have received. I'm glad to hear that some people are like, oh, hey, another weird, like, disconnected and like a little bit worrying video from Hank. I didn't think that you guys were gonna be worried about me. Some people said that I was exhibiting signs of a breakdown, or that I was looked very sleepy. My eyes were sunken. If my eyes are sunken, well, first I did have a bad colitis week, and it is much better now, and I did lose a little bit of weight kind of fast. Doing better. But, that may have been it. It's probably the lighting. It may also be that I'm getting older. So I'm not gonna look as youthful forever. Someday, I'll stop looking like a 25-year-old, I swear. How's my hairline? It's always been like that. Anyway, people have been thinking that I've been going bald since I was a baby. When I was bald, they were like, you're going bald, son. No, they probably didn't. They were like, it'll grow in someday, kiddo. I don't know. Was I bald? I'm sure I was bald when I was a baby. That's how they mostly are. And I am fine. Just that's what I wanted to clear up. Not any more sleep deprived than your average father of a 1.5-year-old toddler. Not extra stressed about anything. If anything, things are a little less stressful for me these days. Though I am spray painting a lot of Project for Awesome rocks right now, and my spray painter finger hurts. So that's sort of a new health concern. Also, like, literally my forearm muscles. I had not thought that this was going to be a physically difficult activity, but here we are. My hand and forearm hurt from spray painting rocks. But I'm almost done, and would have been done tonight, and wouldn't be sitting here vlogging right now if it wasn't raining outside on the rocks, which luckily dried before it started raining. I am instead doing this, when maybe I should be signing pieces of paper for an absolutely remarkable thing, and maybe I will do that later. It's only 8 o'clock. There's other hours left in the day, but so here's what I'm doing. I'm terrible at getting to the point. I have seen other people doing more unedited content on YouTube, and I kind of see these kinds of videos as, one, an opportunity to be pretty unfiltered and just have an opinion and thoughts, and not really even opinions, just thoughts. Just let it go in a way that maybe will hone a little bit of my off-the-cuff funness, which is useful when you're doing things in real life. I watched a couple stand-up shows, and I was like, I would like to be better in situations where I'm not scripted. And not that stand-up isn't scripted. It often has elements of both scripted and improv stuff, but I'm pretty good at scripted. And I used to be doing a lot of unscripted things, and I haven't in a long time, so I wanted to do that a little bit more. And be able to think off the cuff and think to myself, hey, I'm saying this right now, but what I'm going to be saying right after this, I didn't plan anything. That's exactly the kind of thing that I want to do better at. So a little bit of that, a little bit of opportunity to talk about things in a way that is a little less serious. It kind of feels like if I'm doing one Vlogbrothers video a week, then I have to make that video pretty good and thoughtful and complicated and like something that I really feel like is worth putting out into the world in a weighty way that's worth 100,000 people plus looking at it. Not saying that I don't value the time of the people that are watching this, but if there's, more of it, or it feels like a bonus, then it doesn't feel to me as much like it has to be like joke, point. Well, just a little less pressure, I guess. There's a little less pressure on me for a video like this. The additional thing is I've just been watching other YouTuber people that I know do videos like this where you just talk a little bit, and it seems to be a thing for people who are who want more and who are here for more, and that kind of content hasn't really been around for nerd fighters, I feel like, for a long time. Like, we're so busy with SciShow and Crash Course and books and movies and VidCon and DFTBA.com and all that stuff that I don't feel like there's enough time for me to just like sort of give things, like create content for people who are just here for a little bit more. Now, I was honestly super surprised that people thought like that I seemed like in a bad place. I obviously would not be making extra videos if I didn't have the time to do it and enjoy doing it. I'm not saying I'm not stressed. I have been very stressed out for the last 5 years of my life. It is very difficult for me to not take opportunities when I have them, to see things that are not going the way that I want them to go, whether that's in America or in my life or in my community or in my community, the online video community. And so there are all things that are sources of stress for me. And also, like, I want to do cool things, and when you have opportunities to do cool things, this is sort of like, I think about this in terms of how inequality perpetuates itself. But so maybe that wasn't a thing worth mentioning, but hopefully maybe it will feel as if there is a tie-in here. But when you have more, you can do more, and that isn't always transferable. So if I have more money, I can make more money. This is a well-known fact. This is as simple as if you have $1,000 in the stock market and the stock market goes up 5%, then you made $50. But if you have $100 in the stock market and the stock market goes up 5%, then you made $5. So the increase was the same for both people in terms of percentage, but one person made 10 times more money. And that is like fundamentally like a lot of the way that the wealthy have gotten wealthier recently, or maybe since the stock market existed, frankly. This is also true of, like, you can spend that money to grow your business. You don't have to take out a loan in order to start a new business, or you can buy real estate and that real estate will appreciate, and you can have people paying rent, and by paying rent, they're basically paying your mortgage on the real estate. So you didn't even have to really spend money, you just had to have money in order to accrue equity. These are things that if you took that money and instead of turning it into equity with which to make more money through investment, or whether that investment is in other people's assets like the stock market, it's still your assets in the stock market. Whether it's through other people's businesses in the stock market or through assets that are external to you, like a home that you would rent. It can also be assets that are internal to you, like things that you are like learning, paying for education, or creating a business that then you own and becomes an asset that you created rather than an asset that you purchased and is just appreciating in value. Is this okay? I don't know. Whereas if you give that money away, the ideal situation, like what you imagine is supposed to happen with money that you give away, if you are a person who is giving to charities, that money will be spent and it will be used and it will be done, because that's the goal of charity, is to take the money and turn it into things that, like, actionable good, whether that's purchasing land for protection from development, or it's purchasing medicine for people who need medicine, or if it's a GoFundMe for someone who needs to pay their rent. Like, all of these things are the money goes away, and you don't see that asset accrual, that turning money into more money, that is how billionaires tend to get made. Well, is the only way that billionaires get made, is the only way that like dramatic wealth gets accumulated. So there is a thing that I have seen in wealthy people, that they feel like they have an obligation to use their money to make more money, because then someday they will give the money away and do good with it, but that is some far off time, possibly when they die. I don't believe that is the correct way to do it, but I do understand why people feel that way. This has gotten way off topic, but we're gonna get back. The money becomes more money, and so you feel like you should be doing that instead of giving it away and then being like, well, it could have been 10 times more money in 10 years. But you forget that when someone is able to pay pay off their student loans. Like there's an asset that is appreciating there that you may not be aware of as someone who is given money. When you are able to give money to a health clinic in rural Uganda so that more people can have healthy pregnancies and births, that asset looks like something that just got spent and now that money's gone. But in fact, that asset continues to appreciate in the healthy people who are in that place and then can live healthier lives and not be as worried about the insecurity that comes with not having healthcare infrastructure. So all of those things are actually appreciating. They're just not on the books. You can't see them as well. But getting all the way back, pulling it in to where we started, you can't so much do that with opportunities that are based on a human being's unique skill set, which I think I, to some extent, have. It is not easy to find somebody who has all of the same skills as me, but also more than just the skill set, the much more difficult thing to duplicate is just this. I am me, there is only one of me, and I have what is it? Influence, power, the, social media thing, fame, whatever you call it, it's a thing. And it's not a duplicatable thing. And so when we want to launch a new SciShow, I want to be on that channel because it helps SciShow to have the main host, the creator of SciShow, or one of the creators of SciShow, to be the only host who was a creator of SciShow, to be on that thing so that it has that legitimacy of having me on it. It also has the people who are coming over to see it feel more comfortable, and they feel like I'm a legitimate voice that's telling them, and also lending legitimacy to the other hosts. So these are this thing is not, you can't scale me, but when I say you can't scale me, you can scale a business. If you have one person who's working in a warehouse, you can have two. So I feel that pressure in that there are things that I feel like I am necessary for. And that is something as simple as no one else can write my book. I'm writing the second book. There's a sequel to the book that I have written and has not come out. No one else can do that. I have to do that. I have to be the person doing that, and I don't want to make people wait for 2 or 3 years between when the first book comes out and when the second book comes out, for a number of different reasons that I don't want to get into because it's a little spoilery. I want to be the person who's hosting History of Science. I wish I could be the person who's helping to edit History of Science, not editing the videos, but edit the scripts. But I can't be. I think it would be better for me as a host to have had more fingerprints on the scripts, but that's not something that can happen. And so you have to make those weird decisions to decide where my time is going to go. And also, of course, to life and family and friends and things that I like, and vacation sometimes, which I went on last week. The knowledge that every minute of my time is in an amount of demand is pressure that it takes a little bit of time to get used to dealing with that pressure, and to saying, basically saying two different things that are uncomfortable and sad to say. One, when someone asks me to do something that I really want to do and that I think would be amazing, whether that's helping somebody out or interviewing someone that I respect a whole lot, or just meeting that person at an event and going and supporting them in that way. Saying no to the things that I just feel very bad saying no to them. And there's no way to not feel bad. It's just you have to get comfortable with that. And then two, the knowledge that there will be some things that would be better done by me. And this is not everything that gets done. I have hired people who are better than me at a lot of different things, but there are some things that would be better done by me. The product would be better, or it would be more successful, or more people would watch it if I was doing it, but I can't be the person doing it because I have to spray paint Project for Awesome Rocks. I can't let anyone else do that. That can't be something that I have employees do. That's not that's like breaking the contract, you know? Like, I'm raising money for charity by saying I'm going to create this thing. And so I'm going to create this thing. And I can't have someone else write my book. And I can't have someone else, you know, wash the dishes after Catherine cooks, because even if that would be a thing, you know, some rich people do it this way, you have someone who cleans the dishes, I feel like it would be sort of a break of the contract between Catherine makes dinner and I do the dishes, and we have this equality of, like, some equality of chore. Not that there is equality of chores in my house. To be very clear, there is not. I do far fewer chores. You have to have these things that you kind of a little bit hold as a personal responsibility, and then, but you know that the time that you're not spending doing something that, I don't know, whether it's like strategic planning or ideation or script writing or like the stuff that I feel like I'm really good at, like, I know that it's bad for my company, or it's bad for, like, or I'm not, like, actualizing all of the good that I could be doing in the world, because there's a lot invested in this, but there's no way to externalize that. There are some ways, and I do work to do that by empowering the people that I work with and helping them learn new skills and do cool things, and also by hiring people who are better than me at some stuff, like the SciShow team. To be clear, way better than me at writing science scripts. In fact, when I submit scripts to SciShow these days, they just smile and nod, and they're like, "This is great. Can you come back to me with better script?" And they're right. Like, they know SciShow better than I do in a lot of ways. So there are ways to do that, and and honestly, I think that it's some of the most valuable work that I've done to help leverage, to help externalize the you know, the value that is that is like me, to get that out of me some. And I don't think it's any secret that is a goal. But then there are also things that, like, I never want. I just can't, like, I feel like it's a violation of a contract to say, like, have someone else edit a Vlogbrothers video. Like, it's just not a thing that can happen. So, am I stressed out? Sure. Because I feel like there are responsibilities. Is that necessarily something that, like, is super, like, 100% rational? Of course not. Of course, I am going to imagine my impact as being greater than it is. I'm going to imagine my necessity as being greater than it is. But it doesn't. Like, and I think about this all the time. Just because something is irrational doesn't mean you're not feeling it. I super am feeling it. But that doesn't mean that, like, it's not a good idea to make a 20-minute long video blog talking about a little bit of this stuff, or talking about the bees, or about $17 billion sitting off the coast of Colombia, or whatever else that other video was about, which I forgot. I want to do that. I want to have a little bit more, like, there's definitely a goal of, you know, having a separate life and having, you know, obviously a private life, which I don't think anybody thinks I don't have. Like, I'm not a daily vlogger, but I want to, you know, have there be things in my life that aren't broadcasted on the internet. But I also think that it's been so long, maybe, that since there's been much conversation about, like, how, and it's hard to fit into 4 minutes too, about how the thing is, and, like, I'm the CEO of a bunch of different companies, and I have to, like, you know, have a lot of meetings with my employees about how their projects are going, and assessing and reassessing and growing things and rethinking things. And that's a little bit weird stuff to share because it's not super relatable. And also, I spent a lot of time in this video talking about, like, basically asset management and like super capitalist kind of thoughts as applied to me, a human being. But hey, if everything is an asset, so are people. And so I kind of consider my time to be an asset. And if my time is an asset, it is the only thing I have, and I have a limited amount of it, and it is my life. So I am also an asset. So you have to consider the opportunity cost of the time you aren't spending working and the time that you are spending working on something and not something else. This is not correct. It is certainly not the only way that I imagine my time. It is certainly not the only way that we should imagine our time, but it is. And I think that it maybe places undue pressure on me. But to be clear, this is not new pressure. In fact, I feel a lot less stress right now than I have in a long time. You know, there's always a lot of stress in business because you're dealing with people's livelihoods, and you're also dealing with, you know, the delivering for clients or delivering for people who, whether that's your employee or for a partner, who are, you know, really important and who you feel a great deal of obligation to. Seeing that as more of like that we need to figure out how to make a business that's going to be around in 50 years rather than we need to figure out how to make a business that's going to make me feel like whatever, like successful entrepreneur or whatever. I need to get away from that, and I think it's like, I kind of scoffed at that just there, but I think that like in the business world, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of people want to be in this so that someday somebody will say like, multiple serial entrepreneur. And to be clear, taking time with the Delete This podcast and also with, you know, just personally, and also like having time that I really enjoy spending that isn't work and doesn't feel like work, whether that's hanging out with friends or whether that's hanging out with family. And also like, you know, obviously being a dad changes this some too, but I think that it's probably more than that, though it's very difficult to tell. Like there are like legitimate hormonal changes that happen to you when you become a father, and they change you, like you become a different person. And yeah, I think that like to some extent, that has also been part of my decoupling of my identity from this stuff a little bit. And that's not to say that any of this has become less important, but it becomes less stressful and gives me a better perspective on it and makes me want to do things maybe a little bit differently, but I think most of that comes from a place of like not being as anxious, which might create a little bit more confidence, might actually make for better decision making. I think that stress can lead to good decision making, and particularly in that it helps you or makes you spend a lot of time thinking about potential problems that might occur when you're feeling stressed out. I don't know that there's any way to run a business without laying in bed at night thinking about what might go wrong and how to you know, work to make those things less likely to happen. But there's also something to be said for just the confidence of belief in your mission and what you're doing, and not having that anxiety being a driving factor. This was a very long way of saying like, I'm good. And I do have a stressful life, but I also, you know, really am thankful that I have such great family, both like sort of my like nuclear family and also beyond that, as support structures that allow me to carve out, and also great coworkers that allow me to carve out time to do things like sign a lot of pieces of paper, spray paint a bunch of rocks, and write a lot of words. And I also want to say like, just like, stress can be unhealthy for sure, but I've always been able to find, well, not always, but almost always been able to find respite from that stress in great media, in relationships, and, you know, games and Mario and all of that stuff, and also in creation. Like, this is something that I also would really want to lay out here. There is so much good that comes from a process of creation, and that could be something as simple as making a really rambly video, or in the same way that it would be if I had a pen and paper and was writing these things down, hopefully in a more coherent way than this has been. That and also like writing songs, which I still occasionally do, writing books, writing stories. All that stuff is such wonderful escape. And also, like, when one of those things is getting stressful, when I feel like I'm failing at whether it's writing a scene or not capturing a character's voice correctly, there are other modes of creation. And honestly, running a business is an extremely creative enterprise. I don't think that people tend to talk about it that way. You know, humans are the most complicated thing that you could possibly be painting with, you know, to create, to bring together a group of people to create a team that's going to make something wonderful. Obviously, like, they're doing like most of the creative activity, but there's also a creation in the building of a team. I think that isn't taught, like, I don't feel like that's ever talked about in terms of, I don't read that much like management philosophy or anything, but I don't feel like that gets talked about in sort of pop business discussions, that it really is about like incentivizing people and finding teams that work really well together, and that can learn from each other and take and support each other and care about both each other and the project. There are a lot of different ways to do that, and I think that like so many different ways that it's kind of like there's the same number of ways to paint a painting and the same number of ways to write a book. I think that we end up not talking about business management, just like the most boring two words you could put together, through a creative lens, because I think that, one, it's a very capitalist thing. And like capitalism isn't a huge fan of like creative metaphors, but also because we tend to want it to be a science. You know, we want it to be like physics. We want it to be something that you can measure, and the analysts will be able to put together their and this is mostly the case for large companies. The analysts will be able to put together all the numbers and be within a 5% margin of error for the earnings report that comes out the next day. And when they're wrong, it's a big hubbub, but mostly they get it right. And so you want it to seem like, you want all this stuff to seem like it's rocket science. Like, it's complicated, but you can hit Mars from Earth with a rocket if you aim it right. On a human scale, it's really not that way at all. You know, the little things that can throw a wrench into the works and slow everybody down 10%. Sometimes they're interpersonal, and sometimes they're like just something that happened to one person. And sometimes they're external. Sometimes they're things that you can't plan for inside of the organization. That creativity, like both in terms of like building your toolkit of people who have their own toolkits, which is a remarkable privilege to be able to do that, or if it's creating a strategy for interfacing with the media landscape as it continues to change. All very creative endeavors, and so like I find a great deal of respite in those creative endeavors, even when it is a source of stress, because there's this pressure that's like, you got to fix this, man, and if you feel like you can't fix it, then that's a terrible feeling, and I felt it a number of times in my career. But when you start to think of ways that maybe it will get fixed, even before those ideas are implemented, it starts to feel like writing a song a little bit. It starts to feel like making something, and that's a good feeling. And even if you're being pushed into that good feeling by bad feelings, like ultimately, as long as you end in a place of creation, I tend to not have a hard time falling asleep at night. Okay.